Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of World at War. I am your host, Jyotsna Kumar. Pakistan-occupied Kashmir is on a razor's edge. Anti-government protesters have taken to the streets in thousands, demanding economic and governance reforms. At least 15 people, 11 civilians and 4 security officers have been killed in fierce clashes between security forces and protesters. Reportedly, Pakistan, amid escalating unrest, has deployed around 14,000 troops in a bid to bring the rapidly deteriorating situation under control, but to no avail. The cities and towns have been brought to a standstill and tensions are running high on the streets with heavy police presence. Also, early on Wednesday, Pakistan renewed deadly airstrikes on neighboring Afghanistan, shattering more than a month of relative calm between the two sides. According to Afghanistan's government, the strikes hit the eastern provinces of Khost, Kunar, and Paktika, killing 13 people, including 11 children, and injuring 14 other civilians. At a time when Pakistan government is being condemned internationally for its brutal crackdown on dissent in occupied Kashmir, the timing of these strikes on eastern Afghanistan posed the inevitable question: has the Pakistan Army Chief Asim Munir resorted to bombing Afghanistan in a bid to divert attention from the widespread dissent and the ruthless crackdown by Pakistan? Our next report explores.
Pakistan-occupied Kashmir has been rocked by days of anti-government protests. The principal actor behind these protests is the Joint Awami Action Committee, or the JAAC, led by activist Shaukat Nawaz Mir. A grassroots umbrella organization that represents traders and civil society groups. It emerged in 2023 as the leader of an anti-government protest movement across Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. In the run-up to the 27 July elections for 45 seats to Pakistan-occupied Kashmir's Legislative Assembly, the JAAC called for a region-wide strike to protest the reservation of 12 seats for refugees. Those seats are contested by candidates who do not live in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir but elsewhere in Pakistan. In response, the regional government banned the activist group on the 5th of June under anti-terrorism laws. The members of the JAAC, arguing that they were demonstrating for legitimate economic and political rights, labelled their listing as a terror group and oppression. A couple of days later, on the 7th of June, clashes erupted between supporters of the outlawed JAAC and security forces after the Supreme Court of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir ruled that the 12 reserved legislative seats are constitutionally protected and cannot be abolished without a constitutional amendment. On Sunday, the deadliest day of the protests, at least 11 people were killed and dozens more were wounded. In order to control the escalating situation, authorities in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir suspended internet and mobile network services, while cities, towns and villages observed a complete shutdown. Reportedly, more than 70 JAAC members were arrested over the weekend, and civilians, anticipating protests and lockdowns, rushed to stock up essential supplies.
Tomorrow, there will be a lockdown, the market will be closed. Because of that, we are buying these items. The problem is that people are taking more than they need, things that they do not actually need. What will poor people do? They need these items too. Now, a lockdown will be imposed, markets will be closed, shops will be shut, and people are taking all these things away.
On the 9th of June, New Delhi, while condemning the incidents of reported violence against protesters, appealed to the international community to hold Pakistan accountable for what it described as misdeeds and abuses.
We continue to see in this context a pattern of fake news and videos emanating from Pakistan. It is a desperate attempt by Pakistan to cover up its own failings and deflect attention away from its human rights abuses. There are reports of police brutality, which you would have seen. There are several reports in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. in which several people have been killed. There are several more who have been injured. We hope the international community will hold Pakistan accountable for its misdeeds and its abuses.
On the same day, cities and towns across Pakistan-occupied Kashmir were brought to a standstill in response to a general strike called by the recently banned Joint Awami Action Committee.
Every shop, every market, every lane, every street, and every bazaar is completely shut. People have virtually disappeared. It feels as if no one lives in this settlement. This is a highly civilized, peaceful and decent protest, a protest conducted within the bounds of the law and the constitution. It rejects the government's narrative that these people are terrorists. These people are peaceful. The real terrorist is the government, which tries to suppress this peaceful voice through coercion and force.
While the deserted streets in the capital Muzaffarabad and elsewhere were enveloped in an uneasy calm, a significant police presence did not help in diffusing tensions. The next day, an Mi-17 helicopter of the Pakistani Army Aviation crashed near Muzaffarabad during takeoff, killing all 22 personnel on board. Since the banning of the JAAC, the regional government has adopted a tough stance and ordered registration of sedition cases against 4 prominent leaders of the banned activist group, further announcing a 10 million rupee bounty on their arrest. But the protests, despite severe restrictions, have continued, giving rise to serious questions about the future political trajectory of the region.
On the 11th of June, the American President Donald Trump, following 2 rounds of tit-for-tat strikes between the United States and Iran this week, said ominously that the United States will hit Iran very hard and that very night and will soon take control of the Islamic Republic's oil and gas infrastructure and markets. And as the world geared for a major escalation in the Iran war, the American president, not for the first time and in line with his blow, hot and cold nature, announced the cancellation of the scheduled attacks against Iran, further adding that a deal was likely to be signed imminently. The next day, Tehran too echoed Trump's line, saying that a deal with the United States to end fighting in Iran has never been closer. Our next report brings you more details.
The 28th of February is a date destined to be etched onto the collective psyche of Iranians for a long, long time. On this day, in a joint attack by Israel and the United States, Iran's former supreme leader, 86-year-old Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the man who had ruled Iran for close to 4 decades and essentially shaped Iran's defiance, was assassinated, thereby triggering a war long feared. In retaliation, Iran launched attacks on Israel and U.S. allied states in the Gulf, as well as effectively closing the Strait of Hormuz, a key shipping route for the world's oil and liquefied natural gas. Though a ceasefire was agreed in April, both the U.S. and the Islamic Republic have exchanged intermittent fire, including 2 rounds of tit-for-tat strikes this week. On Thursday, the American President Donald Trump, not for the first time, threatened to hit Iran very hard and take control of the Islamic Republic's oil and gas infrastructure and markets, but changed his tune within hours. Cancelling scheduled attacks against Iran, he said that a deal was likely to be signed imminently.
We have a signing soon, and the documents are in pretty final shape, so we'll see. Very good. Should be done. That should be done pretty quickly. They want it every bit as much as everybody else wants it.
The next day, in an interview with state television, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi struck a hopeful note and said that a deal with the U.S. to end fighting in Iran is close and includes the lifting of the U.S. blockade of Iran. But that talks on Iran's nuclear program would begin later.
These negotiations, which will lead to the end of the war, are envisioned in two stages. The first stage is a memorandum of understanding to be signed between Iran and the United States. Then negotiations for the second stage will begin, and subsequently, in the second stage, we will have a final agreement. We postponed the nuclear issue to the final agreement for various reasons, as it was truly impossible to discuss it under current circumstances.
As far as the Strait of Hormuz is concerned, Araghchi said that its administration would no longer be the same as before. It is to be noted that since closing the crucial waterway, Iran has insisted on a fee to be paid by vessels seeking to cross, with the United States insisting passage should be free to all shipping.
This is the serious decision of the Islamic Republic of Iran that the future of the Strait of Hormuz, the future of the management of the Strait of Hormuz, will no longer be as it was in the past. When I say the future of management, it is because our sovereignty has always existed, exists now, and will always exist. No one can challenge Iran's sovereignty over this strait, of course, with Oman. But whether the management of this strait, the management of the traffic in this strait will be as it was in the past, it will certainly not be as it was in the past.
Though there is a greater level of optimism and a greater openness about the substance of the agreement, there is still a small distance to go. Barely hours after both sides said a deal to end the Iran war was closer than ever, the United States says that it downed multiple Iranian drones targeting commercial ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Cautious optimism, it seems, is the order of the day, and performance rather than promises is a key word here.
Bolivia, the Central South American nation, has been rocked by weeks of civil unrest. Thousands of anti-government protesters have taken to the streets of capital La Paz and other cities to express frustration with Bolivia's right-wing President Rodrigo Paz's free market reforms and have been calling for him to step down. Now, the protests have come amidst the Andean nation's worst economic ordeal in the past 4 decades, with year-on-year inflation hitting 14% in April. But a defiant Rodrigo Paz claimed on Monday that the protests calling for his resignation are being driven by what he called narco-terrorists, and took steps to declare a state of emergency. Meanwhile, in La Paz and neighboring El Alto, shortages of food, fuel, and medicine are growing more severe. Our next report brings you the details.
Bolivia, battling one of its worst economic crises in decades, is in the throes of a major political upheaval. For more than 5 weeks, the Andean nation has been besieged by anti-government protests that began with strikes early in May. And have since grown into a nationwide movement involving labor unions, miners, transport workers and rural groups. Thousands of furious and frustrated farmers, miners, teachers, workers from other sectors and indigenous communities have been calling for wage increases, economic stability and an end to the privatization of state-owned companies. About 100 protest blockades around Bolivia have resulted in severe food, fuel and medicine shortages in major cities. According to the Bolivian Highway Administration, the blockades have extended to 6 of the country's 9 regions. On the 6th of June, dozens of riot police backed by military vehicles fired tear gas as they attempted to clear a road in the town of San Julian in the Santa Cruz region, an agricultural breadbasket supplying food to the country's western areas.
We are currently in San Julian. We are conducting a joint operation with both the army and the police. We are going to break the blockade in this area, given that radical and purely political groups are intent on continuing to hold not only this town hostage, but primarily on denying food, basic necessities, and health care to the city of La Paz, the city of El Alto, and the department as a whole, which so desperately needs food and other supplies to be transported from one place to another at this very moment.
On the 8th of June, the embattled President Rodrigo Paz, exhibiting dwindling patience for protests that have paralyzed the country, moved closer to enacting a state of emergency that would allow the military to intervene. Amping up his rhetoric, Paz blamed narco-terrorists for the unrest and warned that their days are numbered.
Am enacting this measure because it is based on the principle of defending the vast majority against those who seek to attack us and disrupt this democratic process, this constitutional process. That is why I always call for dialogue. Our hand is extended to always remain in dialogue, always in dialogue, but beware of infiltrators and of the violent ones and of the violent ones of the narco-terrorists. Just as Marset fell, their days are numbered.
It is to be noted that conservative Rodrigo Paz assumed the presidency 7 months ago following 2 decades of socialist rule. Soon after assuming office, he had scrapped 2-decade-old fuel subsidies that had drained the treasury's international dollar reserves. But so far has failed to stabilize fuel supplies, angering the working class. Paz has also suggested that former President Evo Morales and his coca-growing supporters are pushing protests to destabilize his government. Responding to the allegations, former Bolivian President Evo Morales, who has been in hiding since 2024 but continues to exert influence over the country's politics, said that he is not going to run away.
President, ministers, I'm not going to run away. Arrest me here or kill me here. I'm telling you, I'm not going to run away. By land or air, if they have to attack, let them attack. How many dead will there be? It is their responsibility. Because of what Rodrigo Paz said yesterday, threatening Evo Morales, threatening the tropics of Cochabamba, any dead or wounded will be his responsibility, that of President Rodrigo Paz. And the international community should take note that he has already threatened a region and the social movements.
On Wednesday, a massive march of trade unionists, peasants and indigenous people reactivated the protests. Clashes erupted when protesters attempted to enter Plaza Murillo, where the government is based, and riot police attempted to block their access by firing tear gas. On the same day, Evo Morales, who has backed the protest movement and described the unrest as resistance to Paz's economic policies, led an anti-government march in Cochabamba. The Andean nation finds itself at a critical juncture in its history, both economically and politically. The protesters have proven to be relentless, and the president too has remained defiant. At such an uncertain time, the role of the United States, which reiterated its support for the Paz government on the 4th of June, would also be worth watching out for.
At least 12 people were killed and 10 wounded late on Tuesday evening when gunmen opened fire at an informal settlement near South Africa's biggest city, Johannesburg. Reportedly, the 10 suspects entered the informal settlement through both entrances and moved through the area, opening fire on residents and community members at multiple locations before fleeing the scene in the same vehicle, a white Toyota Quantum. The motive for what the police called a heartless and barbaric attack is yet to be ascertained, and a massive manhunt has been launched to nab the assailants. Our next report brings you the details.
The Republic of South Africa, a crime-weary country, was jolted before midnight on Tuesday by its latest mass shooting. Reportedly, at least 10 suspects, heavily armed with rifles, entered the Jumpers' informal settlement in the suburb of Cleveland, east of Johannesburg, approximately 11:10 p.m. local time, and unleashed mayhem. The next morning, ambulances were on the scene to carry away the victims' bodies, while community members huddled in groups on the streets, with some of them saying that their homes had been struck by bullets. According to police, 9 men and 3 women were killed and at least 10 people were wounded.
In terms of the fatalities, we're still standing at 12, which is 9 male and 3 females. But we are still verifying, because as we are visiting this crime scene, there might be maybe other crime scenes which we could not reach out there. But as for now, we're standing for 12 fatalities, 10 injured.
The dastardly attack took place in an area about 6 kilometers east of the Johannesburg city center and near an abandoned gold mine. Though the motive for the attack is yet to be ascertained and no arrests have been made, there were suspicions the barbaric attack was related to competition over illegal mining in the area.
You could classify these people to be insane, heartless, barbaric, because you could see the way they were moving. Because when we try to account on what actually happened, you could see they entered in there, start shooting, and then going forward, and at the end of the day, and then they were picked up.
Noteworthy is the fact that South Africa has one of the world's highest murder rates, averaging about 60 a day. Shootings are common in a country awash with legal and illegal firearms, often fueled by gang rivalry and competition between informal businesses. Illegal mining in South Africa is a lucrative informal activity which draws people from across southern Africa and has been linked to organized crime, assassinations, extortion and other illegal activities. Last December, 9 people were killed in a mass shooting linked to rivalry between illegal mining gangs when gunmen opened fire at a bar in the impoverished Beckersdal township southwest of Johannesburg and in another gold mining area. Rampant crime has been described by President Cyril Ramaphosa as one of the biggest threats facing the country. And this latest bloody chapter in the notorious recent history only illustrates the fact that the problem is far from over, despite efforts.
And that's all we could pack into this episode of World at War. Thanks for watching.